Many people struggle with learning English despite attending classes, watching movies, or even practicing grammar exercises. They often wonder why their progress is slow and why speaking fluently still feels out of reach. The answer is simple. Reading is the most effective way to improve your English skills. Unlike other learning methods, reading naturally strengthens multiple aspects of the language, including vocabulary, grammar, writing, and even speaking. One of the biggest advantages of reading is its ability to expand your vocabulary effortlessly. When you read a book, an article, or even a comic, you are exposed to thousands of words and phrases in context. You don't just memorize isolated words like you would in a vocabulary list. Instead, you see them used in real sentences, which makes them easier to remember. Studies have shown that people who read regularly learn new words faster and retain them longer compared to those who rely on traditional memorization techniques. This is because the brain naturally absorbs language when it is encountered in meaningful situations. Another reason why reading is so powerful is that it improves your grammar without requiring you to study boring rules. When you read well-written English, you unconsciously pick up correct sentence structures, verb tenses, and word order. You don't have to force yourself to memorize grammar rules. Instead, you develop a natural sense of how English works. This is exactly how native speakers learn their language. They are exposed to correct grammar through reading and listening from a young age, and over time, they develop an intuitive understanding of it. Moreover, reading enhances your writing skills in a way that no other method can. When you consistently read good writing, you start to recognize different writing styles, sentence patterns, and expressions. This exposure helps you improve your own writing because you subconsciously adopt these structures in your own work. Many successful writers say that they became better at writing simply by reading a lot. The more you read, the more natural and fluent your writing becomes. But what about speaking? Can reading really help with that? The answer is yes. While reading alone won't instantly make you a fluent speaker, it builds the foundation needed for strong communication skills. The more words and sentence structures you absorb through reading, the easier it becomes to express yourself in conversation. When you have a rich vocabulary, you don't struggle to find the right words when speaking. In fact, people who read regularly tend to be better speakers because they are exposed to a wider range of language. In short, reading is the key to mastering English. It strengthens vocabulary, improves grammar, enhances writing, and even supports speaking skills. Unlike other methods that require effort and memorization, reading makes learning natural and enjoyable. So if you want to improve your English quickly and effectively, start reading today. Many English learners spend years attending classes, memorizing vocabulary lists, and completing endless grammar exercises. Yet they still struggle to speak fluently or understand native speakers easily. The reason is simple. Traditional methods focus too much on rules and structured learning instead of natural language acquisition. Reading, on the other hand, provides a far more effective and enjoyable way to improve English skills. One of the biggest problems with traditional language learning is that it often feels like a chore. Many students are forced to read textbooks filled with dry explanations and unnatural example sentences. They spend hours doing grammar exercises that feel repetitive and disconnected from real-life communication. As a result, they may know the rules, but they struggle to apply them in actual conversations. Learning this way can be frustrating and discouraging, making it harder to stay motivated. In contrast, reading real books, articles, or even comics allows learners to absorb English naturally, just like a child learns their first language. When you read a story you enjoy, you're not just memorizing words, you're seeing them in action, used in meaningful and engaging contexts. This makes learning effortless because your brain naturally picks up patterns without you even realizing it. You begin to recognize common phrases, sentence structures, and word usage without needing to memorize grammar rules explicitly. Research has shown that students who read extensively improve their language skills much faster than those who rely only on traditional methods. A study conducted in American schools found that students who were given exciting books to read on their own outperformed their peers in both reading and writing skills. This experiment even included students who previously struggled with literacy. Similarly, Another study in Singapore found that students who engaged in silent reading performed better on grammar tests than those who only studied grammar through exercises. This proves that reading naturally reinforces grammar and vocabulary in a way that textbooks simply can't. Another major advantage of reading is that it allows learners to engage with English on their own terms. Unlike in a classroom setting, where lessons are rigid and structured, reading gives you the freedom to choose what interests you. Whether it's a detective novel, a science fiction book, or even a magazine, you're more likely to stay engaged when you genuinely enjoy what you're reading. This motivation leads to more consistent practice, which is key to language learning success. Ultimately, reading is not just a more effective way to learn English, it's also a more enjoyable one. By immersing yourself in interesting and meaningful content, you naturally improve your vocabulary, grammar, and comprehension skills without the stress of memorization or drills. So instead of relying on outdated methods, pick up a book you love and let the learning happen naturally. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is choosing books that are too difficult or uninteresting. Many people believe that to improve their English, they need to read complex novels, classic literature, or academic texts. However, struggling through books that are too advanced or boring often leads to frustration, making it harder to stay motivated. Instead, the best way to improve your English is to read books that are both easy and enjoyable. When you read something that is too difficult, you end up stopping every few sentences to check the dictionary. This interrupts the flow of reading and makes it feel more like studying than an enjoyable activity. As a result, many learners give up because it feels overwhelming. Research shows that you should understand at least 98% of the words in a text for reading to be effective. If you have to constantly look up words, your brain spends more time decoding individual words rather than understanding the overall meaning of the story. This can make reading frustrating rather than fun. On the other hand, reading easy and engaging books allows you to absorb the language naturally. When a book is simple enough, you can understand the meaning of new words just from the context, without needing a dictionary. This is exactly how native speakers learn when they are children. They don't memorize word lists or study grammar rules. They hear and see words repeatedly in context until they naturally understand them. Reading this way helps you learn grammar, sentence structure, and vocabulary effortlessly because your brain picks up patterns automatically. Another important factor in choosing the right book is personal interest. Many learners feel pressured to read serious books like textbooks or classic literature, even if they don't enjoy them. But reading should feel exciting, not like homework. If you love mysteries, read detective novels. If you enjoy fantasy, try books like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. If you prefer real-life stories, read biographies or news articles. The key is to read what excites you, because when you enjoy a book, you'll want to keep reading. The more you read, the more you improve. Studies have proven that reading enjoyable books helps language learners progress much faster. Experiments in Fiji and Singapore showed that students who read books of their choice outperformed those who only did grammar exercises. They not only learned vocabulary more quickly, but also developed stronger grammar skills without memorizing any rules. Ultimately, choosing the right books is the key to learning English effectively. The best books are the ones that are easy, interesting, and fun for you. If a book is too hard or boring, don't force yourself to read it. Find something better. When you read for fun, you improve naturally, without stress. So pick up a book you love and start enjoying the journey of learning English. Many English learners believe that studying grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary lists, and practicing speaking in a classroom are the most effective ways to improve. However, research and real-life experiences show that reading a large amount of text is actually one of the fastest and most effective ways to learn a language. When you expose yourself to a high volume of written content, you naturally absorb words, phrases, and sentence structures without the need for forced memorization or drills. A great example of this comes from the experience of a language learner who wanted to improve their French. Instead of relying on traditional language classes, they set a goal to read 1 million words in French, which is roughly the length of 20 novels. They started with simple books, then gradually moved on to more complex texts. By the end of the year, they could understand almost everything they read. follow conversations in French, and communicate effectively, all without spending years in a formal classroom. Their progress was significantly faster than that of students who only studied grammar and vocabulary in a traditional setting. This approach works because reading exposes you to thousands of words and sentences in context. Instead of learning words in isolation, like in vocabulary lists, you see them being used in real situations. This makes it easier to remember them because your brain naturally connects the words to meaning rather than just memorizing definitions. Additionally, because you are constantly seeing proper grammar and sentence structures, you learn them intuitively without needing to study complex grammar rules. Another major advantage of reading large amounts of text is that it allows for consistent exposure to the language. Many language learners struggle with retention because they only study for short periods or forget what they learned after a while. However, when you read every day, you are continuously reinforcing the language. This constant exposure helps solidify vocabulary and grammar in your memory, making it much easier to recall words and phrases when you need them in conversation. Some learners may worry that reading alone won't help them speak English fluently. While reading doesn't directly improve speaking skills, it builds the foundation for better communication. When you have a rich vocabulary and strong understanding of sentence structures, forming sentences and expressing ideas becomes much easier. People who read extensively often find that when they do start speaking, words come to them naturally because they have seen them so many times in text. In conclusion, reading large amounts of text is one of the most effective ways to learn English quickly and naturally. It helps expand vocabulary, improves grammar without memorization, and strengthens overall comprehension. If you want to accelerate your language learning, commit to reading more, whether it's books, articles, or even simple stories. The more you read, the faster you'll improve. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is forcing themselves to read books that are too difficult or boring. Many people believe that in order to improve their English, they need to read classic literature, academic texts, or complex novels, even if they don't enjoy them. But struggling through a book that feels like a chore can actually slow down your learning instead of helping you improve. The truth is, the best way to learn is to read what you enjoy and what feels easy to understand. If a book is too difficult, it can become frustrating very quickly. You may find yourself stopping every few sentences to look up words in the dictionary, which interrupts the flow of reading. Instead of enjoying the story or learning naturally, you end up feeling exhausted. Research suggests that for reading to be truly effective, you should understand at least 98% of the words in a text. If you have to constantly look up words, your brain works too hard to decode individual sentences instead of understanding the bigger picture. This can make reading feel stressful rather than fun. Similarly, if a book is boring, it's hard to stay motivated. Many learners feel pressure to read serious books like Shakespeare or classic novels because they think it will make them smarter. But if you don't enjoy what you're reading, you won't feel excited to continue, and you may even start avoiding reading altogether. Reading should never feel like homework. It should be something you look forward to. A better strategy is to find books that are both easy and interesting for you. If you love mysteries, read detective stories. If you enjoy fantasy, pick up a book like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. If you prefer real-life stories, read biographies, magazines, or even online articles. The key is to read something you genuinely enjoy, because when you're interested, you'll naturally want to read more. The more you read, the more you improve without even realizing you're learning. This approach has been proven in language studies around the world. For example, experiments in Fiji and Singapore showed that students who read books of their own choice performed better in language tests than those who only did grammar exercises. They learned vocabulary more quickly and even improved their grammar without memorizing any rules. In the end, reading should be enjoyable, not a struggle. If a book is too hard or too boring, don't feel guilty about putting it down and finding something better. The goal is to develop a reading habit that helps you learn effortlessly. So instead of forcing yourself to read books that make you feel frustrated, choose books that make you excited to turn the page, because when you're having fun, learning English becomes easy. Many English learners focus heavily on grammar, vocabulary, and reading, but they often struggle when it comes to speaking fluently and pronouncing words correctly. One powerful way to improve speaking skills naturally is through the shadowing technique. This method, used by many language learners and even professional interpreters, involves listening to native speakers and repeating what they say in real time. Shadowing helps develop better pronunciation, rhythm, and fluency, making it one of the most effective tools for improving spoken English. So, how does shadowing work? The process is simple. You listen to an audio recording. This could be a podcast, a YouTube video, or an audiobook, and immediately repeat what you hear, trying to match the speaker's pronunciation, intonation, and speed as closely as possible. The goal is to imitate the way native speakers talk, almost like an echo. Unlike regular listening exercises where you just try to understand, shadowing forces you to actively produce the sounds of the language, which helps train your mouth and ears to recognize and reproduce English naturally. One of the biggest advantages of shadowing is that it helps with pronunciation and accent reduction. Many English learners struggle with certain sounds that don't exist in their native language, making it difficult to pronounce words clearly. By consistently repeating native speech, your mouth muscles get used to forming these new sounds. Over time, your pronunciation becomes clearer and more natural. You'll also notice improvements in your intonation, which is the natural rise and fall of speech that makes English sound fluent and expressive. Another benefit of shadowing is that it boosts speaking confidence. Many learners are afraid of making mistakes when speaking, which can cause them to hesitate or speak too slowly. Shadowing helps eliminate this fear because it forces you to speak without overthinking. The more you practice, the more comfortable you become with forming sentences and speaking at a natural pace. Eventually, you'll start to notice that words and phrases come to you more easily in conversations. Additionally, shadowing helps with listening comprehension. By focusing on repeating what you hear, you train your brain to pick up sounds, word connections, and sentence patterns more effectively. This makes it easier to understand native speakers in real conversations, even when they speak quickly. Many learners find that after practicing shadowing regularly, their ability to follow movies, podcasts, and conversations improves significantly. In conclusion, shadowing is an excellent way to improve pronunciation, fluency, and listening skills all at once. It allows you to develop a more natural speaking rhythm, gain confidence, and understand English better. To get started, simply find an interesting audio source, repeat what you hear, and keep practicing. Over time, you'll sound more like a native speaker and feel more confident using English in real-life situations. Many English learners start their journey full of motivation, but after a while, they struggle to stay consistent. They may read for a few days, then take a long break, or they switch between different learning methods without fully committing to one. However, the key to mastering English is not just learning, it's consistent practice. Reading regularly, even for just a short time each day, can make a huge difference in your language skills. One of the biggest challenges for learners is that they expect quick results. Many people believe that after reading 1 or 2 books, their English should improve dramatically. But learning a language is like training for a marathon, not a sprint. You don't become fluent overnight, just like you don't become a professional athlete after 1 week of training. Instead, improvement happens gradually over time. The secret is to make reading a daily habit. Even if you read just 15 to 30 minutes a day, you will see significant progress over the months. Reading consistently helps strengthen vocabulary, grammar, and comprehension in a natural way. When you read regularly, you see words and sentence structures repeated over and over again, which helps you remember them without needing to memorize. The more often you encounter a word in different contexts, the better you understand its meaning and how to use it correctly. This is why reading frequently is much more effective than studying long vocabulary lists. You learn words by seeing them in real situations. Additionally, reading every day trains your brain to think in English. Many learners struggle with translating sentences from their native language before speaking or writing in English. However, when you read often, your brain gets used to processing information directly in English. Over time, this reduces the need for translation and helps you become more fluent and confident in expressing your thoughts. A great real-life example of the power of consistency is the story of a man named Gabriel Weiner. an American opera singer who needed to learn multiple languages for his career. He struggled with traditional language learning methods, but when he committed to reading, listening, and practicing every single day, he mastered several languages in just a few years. His success wasn't because he was naturally gifted, it was because he practiced every day without fail. This story teaches us an important lesson. Small, consistent efforts lead to big results. You don't have to read for hours each day, but if you make reading a regular part of your routine, you will improve naturally. The key is to enjoy the process and stay committed. So pick up a book, start reading, and trust that every page you turn is bringing you one step closer to fluency. In the end, it's not about how fast you learn, it's about how consistently you practice.